Hello there! Welcome to the second installment of Coldwater Curiosities. In the first episode, we looked at acorn barnacles and learned about their life history. And in this episode, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about mussels. Since it is the Pacific Northwest, and as you can tell, it's a little chilly, go ahead and grab yourself a cup of coffee or a warm cup of tea, and I'll meet you right back here, and we'll get started. Hi there! Hillary here for WaterLogged on behalf of Saltwateraquariumdotcom. Like I promised, in this video, I'm going to talk to you about mussels. No, I'm not talking about these kind of mussels. I'm talking about bivalves. Let's go ahead and get right into it. For today's video, I'm in a different part of the Puget Sound than I was before. Here, there is a lot more boat traffic, and it's located just outside the state capital. Now, one thing I didn't keep in mind when I showed up here was that it is high tide. But you know what? The great thing about mussels is that you can find them no matter whether it's high tide or low tide. So today, we are going to be looking at Pacific blue mussels and potentially even California mussels. Now, before you say, hey, how can you have a California mussel in the state of Washington? Well, they have expanded their native range, and California mussels are known to be seen in the Puget Sound region. And if you're looking at these blue mussels thinking, hey, I live on the East Coast and I have those in my area too, well, you're not wrong. Blue mussels are also found on the East Coast and in waters around the world. Now, even though I showed up at high tide, like I said, I wasn't worried because you can find the Pacific blue mussels at high tide just at the water's edge, but you can also find them at low tide and a few meters below the water. So they have a pretty impressive range. They're adapted to live both in and out of the water. Now, where you're going to find them, obviously, this has given you hopefully a good idea. You can find them on docks and marinas like this one I'm at here. You can find them on hard, rocky surface and different substrates that are fairly secure. You can look for them in seagrass beds. You could also find them on oyster reefs, on top of woody debris that might be floating or nearby docks and marinas. And of course, you can also find them on marine vessels that are floating in the water. Now, these adult mussels are going to be settling out and securing themselves in areas that are going to bring them good sources of food, because once they settle, for the most part, they don't really move the rest of their life. That's why food sources are important. Now, you might be asking, well, what do they eat? So mussels are suspension feeders, or sometimes we refer to them in the aquarium hobby as filter feeders, meaning they're going to be eating things that are floating by them in the water column. They'll pull that food in and they will filter it and then release the waste. So you can expect them to be eating things like phytoplankton and detritus that are in the water column. Now, what about predators for these guys? Well, they have a pretty large range of predatory species, both above and below the water. Since they're above and out of the water at certain periods of time, you might not be surprised to know that they are preyed upon by birds and even crabs, as well as humans, because these are, after all, edible. Now, something that you might not suspect would prey on them and might have a hard time to prey on them are snails. But when it comes to protecting themselves, mussels have a really interesting tool in their pocket. Mussels are able to create what are called byssal threads. These threads are secreted by the glands in the mussel's foot. You might have heard these called byssal tissues, or even the beard on a mussel. If you've ever purchased mussels for consumption before, you might have seen these and had to peel them off. But what this is a really strong fiber that they're able to use to attach themselves to those hard surfaces. So when they settle in the community structures in clusters like we find them here, that's how they're doing so. But they can also use those incredibly strong tissues and fibers to help protect themselves against predators like snails. If they sense that a snail is coming, they can use chemical cues in the water to detect this. They are able to attach one end of the byssal thread to the snail and attach another end of it to a hard surface to prevent the snails from preying on them. How crazy is that? Now, just like the acorn barnacles I talked about in the first video, mussels have two different life stages. As adults, they are attached to these hard surfaces, and for the most part, they really don't move around. However, when they are young, they're actually a free-swimming larvae called a villager. Every spring, in April and May, mussels will spawn into the water column. And once those eggs are fertilized for between 4 and 7 weeks, those villager larvae will swim around and become part of the plankton class before they settle out onto a hard surface. And they do so in communities, much like you see here. Water quality is really important for the growth of these mussels. So over the course of their short lifespan, they can grow up to around 4 inches in length. But if they don't have the resources and the water quality is poor near them, they might not be able to do that. Just like many of the invertebrates that we're familiar with, mussels are sensitive to things like mercury and copper in the water. Now, they're also sensitive to salinity, but not as much so. They can handle a pretty broad range in salinities. So let's go ahead and check to see what the salinity is here. Well, unfortunately, my time to spend here observing these mussels is about to come to a close, but before I go, I wanted to leave you with one last fascinating fact. Did you know that a single gram of mussel can filter up to 2.5 liters of water per hour? How incredible is that? All right, that's going to conclude this video today all about mussels. I hope that you've enjoyed it as much as I have, and I really sincerely hope to see you for the next Coldwater Curiosities. This has been Hillary for WaterLogged on behalf of Saltwateraquarium.com. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.